another episode of Shooting It Straight with myself, Justin Jackson, and my man John. Sorry if you're listening. It sounds like I've got tissues stuck up my nose. I'm kind of going through uh, whatever my kids had over Christmas break. I'm trying to kind of get over that. Plus, if you've never been to Mexico City, this uh, the air out here is about as thin as you can possibly get. So um, bear with me as we go through this. Obviously, happy and merry late Christmas. Happy holidays to everybody listening. Um, I think that's a very important time to hang out with the family and spend time with them and enjoy that time. So I hope everybody had a great time. Before we start, I just want to give a shout out to Johnny T-shirts. If you need any gear, any UNC apparel, they're the place to go. And also Congruity HR, um, where Tar Heel fans can get a free payroll and HR needs assessment whenever you need it. So shout out to them for sponsoring this video. And I think John, we haven't had much action when it comes to the Tar Heels lately, so I think we got a good episode of just questions and mailbag. Um, so yeah, you go ahead and start us off with whatever the fans and stuff like that have for us today.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a special edition of the Shooting It Straight podcast. It's the mailbag episode. We took questions from the Inside Carolina message boards, but if you're listening and you don't have a subscription, you can also always tweet us questions or email us or find Justin after a game and yell at him and give him a question. Then we'll record it and we'll take it on the podcast. So we have a few questions today. We're going to start off with this one from Josh 32303. He asks, who is the most underrated player you've played against? Justin, what do you think?
Most underrated player. Are we keeping it college? Is
Let's
that how we
go.
want to do it?
Let's go all basketball. Any
Okay.
basketball you've played, high school, college, pros.
Most underrated player. That's a good one. Probably the most underrated player that I've played against. There's a lot of them, y'all. I'd probably say Drew Holiday. Drew Holiday, either Drew Holiday or Derek White, and they're both on the same team this year, which is crazy. But um, they both do so many things that you might not see necessarily in the box score, but the effect that they have on a game is, I think, a big reason why the teams that they play on have success. They can do basically everything. Obviously, Drew is an unbelievable defender, so is D. White. But, if you need them to score, they can go out and get 20, 30, whatever you need them to do. And obviously, they're getting paid and playing the minutes. And, I think they still get the recognition. But I think those two guys for me that I played with were very underrated, at least in my eyes.
Nice. Next one here is from Ryan Gentry 957. What do you think are reasonable expectations for this UNC basketball team the rest of the way? We've been talking about it all season, kind of what this ceiling is for this UNC team. They're currently 8-3. They've notched some quality wins over Tennessee, Arkansas, Oklahoma. Justin, as you look ahead to the rest of the season, what do you think fans should expect from this team?
I think, like we talk about, each week, I think this team's ceiling is actually very high, in my opinion. I think it's very high for a couple different reasons. I think college basketball this year isn't necessarily, there's not a clear cut favorite in this college basketball. So I think the field is wide open, and I think this team has all the pieces that it needs to make a run and win a lot of games. I think the way that RJ is playing, we're going to continue to hit on that. The way he's playing is unreal. We haven't seen this really since probably T Hands. So the way he's playing obviously has this team going at a crazy high rate when it comes offensively. But then I think, like I talked about with the pieces, Harrison Ingram is, if he plays as consistent as he has played, through the non-conference play, I think they can make and win a ton of games in the ACC, make a run in the ACC tournament, get a great seed, which is huge, getting a good seed in the NCAA tournament, and hopefully get the right matchups. And I think they can make a really good run. So I think you look at all these pieces. Now it all goes back to if these guys play consistently. If Cormac is hitting shots consistently, this team is a totally different team. If he's not, then it's hard to find shots. If Mondo is playing as dominant as we've seen him at times before in the past, then this team is a totally different team. If he's not, and he's missing bunnies around the rim, and he's allowing people to just front him or take him out of the game, then this team looks totally different. So it's really up to each individual player that plays throughout the game and throughout the season to take that as an opportunity and a responsibility that I need to do my job for this team to be able to be at its best. So me personally, I think that the expectations can be high, but at the same time it's on the players to do their jobs whenever it's time for them to do their jobs.
We were just talking a little bit there about a tournament run for UNC this season. I want to take you back, Justin, to your UNC career and your tournament run in 2017. This is a question from Tar Heel Fan for Life. In the Arkansas game in the 2017 second round, UNC was down by 5 at the under 4 TV timeout. What was going through your mind in that moment, if you remember that tournament game, Justin?
It's funny that this question comes up because I literally was just talking, I think yesterday, one of my coaches is from Arkansas, and we were talking about how, our record, I want to say, was 2-0 against Arkansas. But that game, Arkansas should have beat us. I mean, they were better than us in almost you know, every situation. We just made some big time plays down the stretch. Now, I think it's still controversial whether there was a travel that wasn't called at the end of that game that allowed us to get a putback. But at the same time, we made plays at the end of the game whenever we needed to make it. But now that we're out of the situation, I will tell you that I was definitely a little nervous. There was definitely, you know, are we going to be able to pull this out? Because, like I said, they were playing at a high rate, and they had some good players. I mean, Bobby Portis is in the NBA now for the Bucks. They had some guards that were really good. Um, and so it was definitely an interesting game, but you also you got to play all 40 minutes, and we were able to finish that game out. Those last things, like in the question, we had 4 minutes left and we were down five, and we ended up pulling that thing out. We had some pressure going. I think we had some press. Um, some guys made some huge shots, some guys made some big plays, and so we were lucky to make it out of there. But that was probably, honestly, I mean, obviously everybody can look at the Kentucky game when Luke hit the shot, but that was probably the one game where we probably deserved to lose that we were able to pull it out. So, you know, sometimes you got to get lucky a little bit on a tournament run. So we definitely did that game.
Yeah, I was reading the AP story from that game this morning, just prepping. Roy Williams said after the game, I don't mind saying I feel a little lucky. Every now and then I knock in a long putt too. So that's kind of a classic quote. And it shows, that was a long tournament run, 6 games, and game 2 of 6 was maybe the most stressful or the most uh, dangerous for UNC to lose that one. Let's stick with the theme of the 2017 team. This is a question from B Smitty 2322. A lot of number listeners here. You're twisting my words here, making me read all these numbers. If you had to take one player from the 2017 team and put them on this year's team to make them a legit contender, who would you choose and why? And yes, you can choose yourself.
I mean, I think if you ask every basketball player if they can choose themselves, I think they'll choose themselves. Um, I think if you were to throw me onto this team, um, that means basically Cormac would probably be coming off the bench, which would not be a bad six man coming off the bench. To be honest, I'd probably enjoy playing with a guy like Elliott or Harrison, just being able to, you know, create and make plays, you know, for me to be able to, do whatever I need to do offensively. But, when I look at our 2017 team, I think an Isaiah Hicks would be really good for this team. Isaiah was very underrated for us from the standpoint of he could do so many things. He was so versatile. He was athletic. He was physical. He could play on the perimeter defensively. He could guard. So I think if you were to put Isaiah, now go back to the two big lineup, um, but I think if you played Isaiah next to Mondo, I think it would open things up a little bit more for Mondo too. And um, I think, a lot of times with Isaiah, he would probably get the matchup that he could exploit a little bit more, just athletically, and it would open up things so much more for this team. So I'd probably go Isaiah just because that's kind of the one spot that this team is kind of lacking when it comes to like a real four man um, or another real big next to Mondo. So I think Isaiah would be a great addition to the team.
I like that answer. We're going to stick with the theme of talking about the 2017 team, and this is a tough question, Justin. So I'm just going to warn you before I put it up here. This is from UNC Secondary Break. Who should have been the 2017 Final Four most outstanding player? This has been a big talking point on the message boards recently. Joel Berry or Kennedy Meeks, with the benefit of hindsight in a few years, what do you think? Who should have been that most outstanding player?
You know what? I think the easy answer for me is that Joel already had the year before. He already had, I think, what the Final Four. Um, he made some Final Four team that would have put his jersey in the rafters already. So because Joel already had his jersey in the rafters, I'm gonna go with Kennedy. Um, but now, if you really look at the games, obviously Joel had an unbelievable, Final Four, especially in the championship game. He was really the only one that was really hitting shots. But what Kennedy did, especially in that Oregon game, basically won us that game. And you go into a game against that Gonzaga team that was the biggest college basketball team I had played against. You had Zach Collins, you had big what was his name, Karnowski or something like that. You had Jonathan Williams, you had Tilly that was there. So you had four legitimate bigs that he had to deal with. Obviously, him, Tony, Isaiah, all the bigs we had. But you had those kind of bigs that he had to handle and deal with all game long against Gonzaga. So I think, me personally, I think Kennedy was very deserving of getting that uh, MOP. I think he was very deserving of getting his jersey up in the rafters. And it makes it easier the fact that Joel already was going to get his jersey in the rafters because of how he played the year before. So I'm going to go with Kennedy in this situation. Just from that standpoint, I think both of them were unbelievable for us and very deserving, but I'm going to go with Kennedy on that one.
I like it. Let's take this scenario here. Pretend the aliens are invading us and they say, Justin, you can take yourself and you can add 4 UNC players. This is past, current rosters and how they were playing when they were at UNC. So, kind of keep that in mind in terms of players who got better once they got to the NBA. But make a starting 5, including yourself, to
Hmm.
play against a group of aliens for the fate of the world. This question is from Brooke. Who comes to mind, Justin? And you have to build the team a little bit around yourself because you got to be the showcase player now in this game.
Okay. Okay. Well, then I'm going to start off just from what I watched growing up. I'm going to start out with Ty Lawson as the PG. I think his speed and his ability to change the game from that standpoint was just we haven't really seen it. I mean, obviously you could put Raymond Felton in there, but I think Ty Lawson was even faster than Ray. So I think I'm gonna go with Ty. Um, if I'm gonna have to be the focal point, because there's a lot of UNC greats, so I could easily throw MJ on there, T Hands, but those guys would for sure be the focal point. So um, I'll go with I'm gonna go with Danny Green as my two. Uh, I think I'm going to keep it with. I'm like we're going to go small. I think we're going to go small. We're going to go Theo as my four. I'm just going to give him a little shout out just because I'm currently playing with him, and hopefully it helps. In games going forward that we play in. Hopefully he feels a little more confident passing me the ball. So I'm going to go Theo as my four. We can play three or four. It doesn't really matter. And as my five man, Ooh, that's tough.
It feels like you need a defensive focused center,
Yeah,
someone who's going to get a lot of
I'm.
boards, block shots.
You know what? I might go if we're gonna go with that. I'm gonna keep it interesting. I'm either gonna go. Let's just go. We're gonna go. We're gonna go top seven. Okay, we're gonna go top seven.
Yep.
Starting five is way too hard. I'm gonna go. Ooh, I'm gonna go with Brendan Haywood
Okay.
as my five. Like you said, defensively, obviously offensively, he was really good too. But defensively, he was so big, could block shots, plug up that paint a little bit. Um, and coming off the bench, I'm gonna have John Henson.
Mm.
I have John coming off the bench, and then I'm going to have. Who am I going to have? I need another shooter with me, so I'm gonna have Wayne Ellington. I'm gonna have Wayne Ellington coming off the bench. Um, so that's my seven. Obviously, fans don't tear me down for not including some of these greats. But if we're gonna, I have to be realistic. If I'm gonna be the focal point of this team, then I can't bring some of these greats on the team. So
Yeah.
I
The
think that's the
question
seven I'm gonna go with.
the question wasn't all-time best UNC starting five. You had to make a basketball team right there. Um, you have to include some strength because otherwise you and Theo are going to be guarding a four and they're going to be backing you down in the
Exactly,
post. So I like that team. Ellington off the bench too. That's a good one. Him and Danny Green, they're just going to be firing away, shooting threes, and you're going to
exactly.
outshoot some teams. I like that. Um, let's stick with talking about teammates of yours and fellow UNC basketball players. This is a question from Sweet Pass. They ask, since you played with Marcus Paige and now he is the director of team and player development, what do you think he brings to the UNC program that may not be obvious to the fan base?
I think he brings. That's a great question too, because people don't see. We talk about it all the time. We don't see what the behind the scenes are and what the off season workouts are like and all that kind of stuff. I think for one, he brings a player perspective that played a lot more recently than some of the coaches that are on the staff. I think that always helps with with current players. I think they always respond better and listen a little bit better to guys who have played more recently. So I think that's one aspect that he brings that you might not necessarily see. I think from player development standpoint, I think Marcus really knows what he's doing and he does his research and watches his film and really is able to accommodate each and every player according to their strengths. And I think that's huge when it comes to player development. You don't just have a basic outline of a player development schedule and each and every player. You've got RJ doing the same exact things that you know Harrison does, and you've got Mondo doing the same things that Seth Trimble does. Like you've got it dedicated to each and every player and to what they need to work on and what their strengths are. And I think that's what Marcus brings to this team. And I think that his ability to do that. Obviously, RJ is he's already really good, but I think the reason you're kind of seeing this jump is Marcus from his player development standpoint, from the confidence that he's fed RJ, from maybe the talks or the film that he's watched with RJ throughout the offseason into the season. I think that's a testament to how good Marcus is in his role right now. And then obviously you add skill that RJ has and the ability for him to go out there and execute everything that he's doing. Um, but I think that's kind of the two things that he brings. And I think fans don't really realize it. They just think, oh, it's Marcus Paige, how great he was at UNC. That's cool to have him on the bench. And it's cool to see former players on the bench, but the things that he brings as far as confidence building and, watching film and knowing what he's really talking about and being able to connect with the players on a different level than maybe, some of the older coaches or, things like that. I think that's a huge thing for us. When I was there, Sean May was just now getting into it. Um, and he had played really recently. So it was easy to talk to him. Kendall was there at the time. So it was easy to talk to Kendall as well, because obviously those guys had just played. They had just played under Coach Williams. So you have this sort of connection that you're able to, you understand the feelings and the emotions that you have in each and every, after a practice, whenever you're just sick and tired of coach getting on you all the time for not hitting the offensive glass. Like they understand and they've been through that recently. So you're able to connect with them on a different level. So I think that's huge for this team, and I think that's why you're seeing the guards. Obviously, there's still growing to do for young guys like Elliott and some of the younger guys, but I think that's why you're seeing guys like RJ and Harrison and guys like that be able to play so well and consistent because of the player development and the things that Marcus is doing for them, behind the scenes.
That's awesome. I like that answer. He's been a great asset. Yeah, to your point too, he's more than just the name. They didn't hire him because he's Marcus Paige, the fan favorite. They hired him for all the reasons you just outlined. Let's kind of stay off the court a little bit. Justin, you've been playing basketball a long time. You got into it because you love this sport, but over the years, you've probably been exposed to the business side of basketball, playing professionally, playing in the G League now. This question is from Jason. What have you learned about the business side of basketball over all the years you've been playing?
I've learned a lot. I mean, I've seen the best and the worst sides of the business side. The funny thing is when you grow up, you play whatever sport or you do whatever you love. Up until probably college, it stays that way. You're just doing it because you love it and it's fun and that's what it is. And then you get to college and it starts to kind of turn into a job. Like this is what I have to do. I've got to go to class. I've got to make sure my academics are right. I have to do things as far as that goes. But outside of that, your main job is to be ready to play basketball, go to practice, lift and watch film, all that kind of stuff. And so, it's still, but at the same time, you're still a college student, and you're still, there's really no real responsibilities. And then when I got to the NBA, I saw very quickly how business and money and uh, egos and pride and all that kind of stuff combined can turn something so beautiful and so enjoyable and so fun and something you loved growing up into a legitimate job that maybe turns into I'm doing this just so I can provide for my family. And that's not to say that I don't play basketball because I don't love it, because I do love playing basketball. It's an unbelievable job to have that I get to. That's basically my 9 to 5. I get to go to the gym, work out, lift, and then come home to my family and that's it. I don't have to worry about going into the office at 7 in the morning and not getting home until 6. Like I don't have to worry about that. So I want to preface it with that. I don't want everybody to come at me and say, "Oh, but you just play basketball." Um, but at the same time, and I'll go through a little story time. At the same time, I've dealt with some things that a lot of people, uh, I don't know, mentally and physically could deal with. I was drafted obviously in 2017 to Sacramento. Uh, I had my ups and downs within that, and then I started playing pretty decently. Um, and now I think I've talked about it before, maybe on different podcasts, but I will never forget the first time that I got traded. We were playing against Houston. It was right at the trade deadline. It was 2018, so it would have been February, first couple weeks in February. I want to say is a trade deadline, and we were getting ready. I had already had one of my teammates get traded, and he was kind of in my position. So, but I hadn't heard anything yet as far as my situation. And so for me, it was my shooting time. That's when I found out that the guy that kind of was in my position got traded. And so it was like, okay, well, cool. Like, I might start tonight. I'm play quite a bit because now I'm kind of propelled into that role. So we go through warm ups, go through layup lines, all that kind of stuff. I'm sitting there on the bench. I always pray right before the game at the end of the bench, and I'm sitting there, and uh, our hype video basically is on the screen, and I'm sitting there. I just finished my prayer, and our head coach comes and sits right next to me. And so for me, I'm thinking, okay, he's about to tell me, hey, this is my matchup. This is what what he needs me to do, yada yada. And he leans over and he whispers to me, hey, you were just a part of a trade. And if anybody remembers, it was actually funny that it was two North Carolina guys, but HB Harrison with Dallas, the video kind of went viral where he was sitting on the bench, but he was already like the trade had already happened, but he was sitting on the bench for the Dallas Mavericks. Um, and I kind of laughed and I was like, wait, are you serious? And he's like, yeah, like, and you can't be on the floor because you're officially like you're officially a part of a trade. So you can't be on the floor for us. And I will never forget the emotions that hit me because it was like, man, me and my wife, we had just obviously we didn't have kids at the time. we were in the middle of starting a nonprofit, which is there now, Gigi's Playhouse, there in Sacramento. And so we had found a great church. Shout out Gigi's Culture, Banning, my guy. We had just, kind of gotten settled, I guess I would say. We kind of found our niche there in Sacramento. And to all of a sudden think that I'm going to have to call my wife and tell her, hey, we're going to have to pick up and leave and move to Dallas. And picking up and leaving and moving to Dallas isn't, okay, we get a week to get everything packed up. I woke up the next morning at like probably 8 o'clock and I had missed calls already. And it was the Dallas Mavericks. Basically, she's not a Dobo, but she basically handles travel and hotels and all that kind of stuff. So I called her back and she was like, hey, I've got you on a flight for 10:30 to come to Dallas. And I'm like, well, I just woke up. I've got a wife. Like, I'm gonna need a little bit more time than that. Like, I can't just pick up and leave. That means I got to pack up right now and head to the airport. Um, so I say all of that to say that the business side of things creates situations that normal working people wouldn't have to deal with. Right. So the next day I was in Dallas. I was in a hotel room, basically with a brand new, having to, you know, get to learn a brand new team, brand new staff, brand new front office, um, and that kind of thing. So then you fast forward to, I probably played my best basketball in the NBA there with the Mavs up until that point. So you fast forward about a year and a half later, I'm hanging out with my family, and obviously now we live in Tennessee, but I'm hanging out with my family there. We were visiting, her family, my wife's family at the time, and we're playing darts, having a good time, hanging out. And I get a text message from one of my friends saying, "Hey, bro, is it true?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, and he sends me a screenshot of a tweet saying that um, a player has been traded for myself, and it was to go to OKC, and completely blindsided, had no idea. Mind you, we're just hanging out. I was not thinking at all about being traded, having to move, none of that. So go to OKC. Um, Unfortunately, that's when COVID was it was right out of the bubble. So the COVID was still a big thing. So I had actually gotten COVID going into training camp, which kind of stunk. But go through that season. Don't really play a lot because obviously now you look at OKC, they're an unbelievable team. But at the time, they were trying to rebuild very young. They were trying to find those pieces that they wanted to build around, and I just wasn't. I wasn't in that. I wasn't in that plan, which is obviously that's OKC's right, and that's their plan. So, but I wouldn't play, and then I would play, and I played really well at times. But then after I would play really well, then I wouldn't play, and whether that was they were trying to you know get a better pick that year, or they just they had a different plan in mind. They wanted the young guys to play. That's kind of whatever their prerogative was. But played some really good ball for OKC. Easter comes around, and we kind of go back and forth. My agent and the GM there, Sam Presti, they go back quite a while, all the way back to San Antonio, and so it kind of went back and forth as far as like, hey, we're going to try to find a trade spot for him, so that because obviously we know Justin doesn't want to be in this kind of situation, and he's still in his career where he can play and help a team and that kind of thing. So it's like, okay, cool. Well, trade line goes through. We don't. There's nothing. Easter comes, and right before Easter, I actually had a conversation with Sam Presti, but my agent had a conversation, and basically it was, I don't think we're going to trade him. We really like what he brings as far as being a teammate, and what he brings, coming off the bench, or even as a basketball player, we like what he brings. So I don't think we're going to do anything with him. I think he's going to finish out the year with us. Come Easter, I get a phone call from my agent, and he's mad. And I'm like, what's going on? And he said, they just called me and they said tomorrow they're going to waive you. And uh, I didn't, because we had those conversations previously. I wasn't expecting it at all. Um, but that's the business of basketball. Obviously there's some nasty stuff that happens in corporate America and all other works of life. But to have to pick up your family and leave. or having to just tell your wife that, hey, we have to, the place that we thought we were settling down at, we've got to pick up and we've got to leave again um, in very short notice. That's little things that we as basketball players and all pro athletes have to deal with that people don't really understand. You know, you see a lot of times people are just like, oh, well, they get paid a lot of money to play a sport as a job. Pay me that money and I'm willing to deal with whatever. It's like, okay, well, if I put you and your family with two kids in this situation and Boston brings you into their office and tells you, hey, you've done everything that we've asked you to do and more, and we've done, and I really don't want to have to do this, but we're going to have to trade you and waive you. I would love to see how people are able to deal with that. So back to the question that was at hand. I've seen every good and bad thing of the business. And it's not to take away from how great, and the benefits and everything that the NBA has brought to me and my family, because I'm more than thankful. It was always a dream for me to make it to the NBA, and I've been able to play. This is year 7. Obviously, I'm in the G this year. Hopefully, something happens when it comes to the NBA. But I mean, I've had an unbelievable career, from my viewpoint, and um, that's kind of what my mindset is now. But at the time, it's tough, man. So, yes, the business side of things is you throw as much money that's being thrown around in the NBA and you throw, people that are in competition with each other and you throw some pride in there and some ego and they can get kind of nasty at times. So, but at the same time, it's a blessing to be here. So I can't really complain too much.
I think that is a perfect segue into our last listener question, a good bonus question here for you, Justin. This is from WVL Heal 1. There's probably a lot of life lessons that come to mind for you from Coach Williams. He always did the quote of the day or the thought of the day before practice. So I won't ask you to recall any of those directly like he might have, if he was talking to you now. But what is the most valuable life lesson you learned from Coach Williams over all the years? Maybe something to help you with some of the off court stuff you just talked about, or on the court, or just life in general.
It's another great question that I actually just was talking with. I think all of this kind of correlates. So I'm gonna try to connect it all. I was just talking with one of my assistants and some of my teammates and things like that. One thing that Coach Williams taught us was accountability, and whether that was being earlier on time for meetings or in practice on the practice plan, having everything timed out to the minute, and that's just kind of how practice ran. And so you kind of apply that to life as far as priorities and getting things done at a certain time. But I think accountability is one of the things that we, in today's society, and we'll just talk about basketball, I think you see a lack of, from the standpoint of nowadays a coach can't really get on a player too hard or can't really say, you know, the wrong things to a player because they can just hop into the portal and go to a different spot, right? And at the time when I was in school, coach would always say like 15 minutes. If you're not 15 minutes early, then you're probably late, and it was just little things like that. I don't know if I was ever late to anything. Maybe one meeting, maybe two, something like that. I'm not obviously a perfect human being, but and I can't really remember a ton of guys who were late to many things, even things that didn't have Coach Williams involved, whether it was 7 a.m. lifts or preseason conditioning or pickup. Um, I can't really I can't remember too many guys while I was there that were just late on a consistent basis, right? Or that didn't take accountability when we watched film, or just didn't, when they were in the wrong, didn't say, "Hey, look, I messed up. I gotta do better." And I think now when you look at kind of this, I don't want to say this generation because I'm obviously a part of this generation. We both are.
Hmm.
Um, But when you kind of look at like how basketball is kind of going, you look at a ton of guys in high school, they transfer to different high schools. They might go to 2 or 3 different high schools within their, 4 years in high school. And Now you go into college and there's like 3,000, 4,000 people in the portal. And it's some guys who played a good amount of time, but maybe they didn't play 30 minutes as opposed to 25 minutes. And, it just kind of creates an environment of not much accountability. When we were at school, it was like I was obviously blessed to be able to play a lot of minutes and start from the jump when I got there. So my experience was a little bit different. But when you didn't do what you were supposed to do, Coach Williams held you accountable to that. There was a game I think it was my sophomore year where Bryce and myself, Coach didn't start us against Boston College, and it was because one, I think Bryce the game before didn't do something that he wanted him to do, and me, I wasn't doing what I was supposed to be doing on the court, and so he decided to start two other people, and we came off the bench, and we actually played really well that game, and then going forward, we played better than we had before he benched us, basically. And I think there's something to that from the standpoint of, okay, well, I can't just do whatever I want to do and think that like it's gonna work out every single time, right? Like at the end of the day, the coach is the coach, and you play under the coach. And yeah, there are some coaches that are more players coaches that allow the players to make certain decisions and give more freedom to certain players. Yes, that's how coaching happens. But I just feel like there's times now where that accountability piece is missing. And so it creates an environment where guys think that they can just do whatever they want. They can, be late to a meeting and think that they can still play 30 minutes, or they can not show up to, something that was supposed to be for the whole team, and they don't have no consequences involved. And I think that's just the wrong way to teach. At the end of the day, these are young people going up through college. I mean, you've got 18, 19-year-olds that are trying to figure out what life is at the end of the day. And you have to teach them those ways so that now, whenever you go into life, for me, now when I go into life, if I have a meeting I'm supposed to go to, then I'm going to try to be there early or at least on time every single time. And if I'm late, I'm going to fess up to it. Hey, my bad. I got stuck in traffic. I had to do something with my family. My bad. It won't happen again. And there's just certain things that now in life, it has come from that accountability piece that Coach Williams had taught us throughout our entire college careers that helps us in life. Um, and at the end of the day, I think that's really the main goal of a coach, is to try to prepare a player for life as opposed to just basketball. So I think that's kind of the biggest thing that Coach taught us. And it wasn't just Coach Williams either. It was Coach Rob. It was HD at the time. It was Sean. It was all the coaching staff. CB. Shout out to CB. Um, it was the whole coaching staff. Like there was a certain standard that was upheld, and if you weren't doing that, then you got to figure something else out. So, uh, shout out to them for preparing me. You know, I don't want to speak for my former teammates, but I'm sure, obviously being around Theo, we were just talking about it. It's helped us in life. And now when you have a family and you're going through the business side of things and you're trying to figure out, okay, what's next and what am I doing and that kind of thing, it prepared us for that for sure.
We appreciate all of the questions. These were some awesome questions. And also, Justin, thank you for all the awesome answers in this special edition of the Shooting It Straight podcast. North Carolina plays Friday tomorrow against Charleston Southern, and then they start ACC play at Pittsburgh on Tuesday, January 2nd. So we'll be back next week to talk more about both of those games and get into the meat, the heart of ACC play. Justin, take us out. Any thoughts about tomorrow's game or any just final holiday thoughts for us to close out the episode?
No, I mean, I think tomorrow's game is going to be a good game to get the legs back a little bit. Obviously, they've probably been practicing and working out, but it's still been the Christmas holidays. Had probably a few days to be able to go back home and hang out with family and things like that. So, hopefully they're able to, kind of get those legs back, get back into a rhythm like they were before Christmas break and finals and all that kind of stuff. So, I think we as fans, we have to kind of be ready for maybe that first half to be a little bit more, a little, I'll say sloppy, but a little less fluid than it was before break. But at the same time, like we talk about early on in this show, I think sky's the limit for this team. And if these guys play consistent and they play to their role, they play to what they can do, their strengths, for this whole team to be really good, each individual player has to play to that. And if they're able to do that, I think they can be really good. So I'm excited to see as the first game tomorrow, and then going into ACC play. And once again to everybody, uh, happy holidays. Everybody enjoy New Year's. Enjoy your family. Family's the most important thing. Family and friends. So enjoy that time. Make sure to hug and love on all of them. Because if it wasn't for a lot of the family, we wouldn't be in the situations that we are in now. So I hope everybody has a great holidays. And yeah, we'll talk to y'all soon.